The ignition coil works with the flywheel to create the electric charge needed to fire the spark plug. A magnet in the flywheel passes by the ignition coil, exciting the wire coil, creating an electric charge that is then sent to the spark plug. The coil will wear out over time and can eventually fail. Sometimes ignition coils fail all at once. Other times they will fail intermittently. Often a bad coil will work when it's cold and then fail once it is warmed up. Replacing the ignition coil is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how.
Hi, I'm Mark Socha.
Do-it-yourself repairs like these are easier than you might think. From lawn machines to cordless drills, kitchen mixers,
Outdoor grills.
our how-to videos walk you through each repair from start to finish. So doing it yourself means never having to do it alone.
Let's get started.
I'll begin by removing the engine cover. Now I'll separate the clutch housing and shaft from the engine. I'll start by removing the air filter cover. Then the air filter, and now the screws that secure the air filter base and carburetor to the engine. I'll go ahead and disconnect the ignition wires. I'll tip the engine over and remove the screws that secure the fuel tank to the engine. And now I'll remove the screws that secure the clutch housing to the engine itself. There's one more screw on the side that secures the air duct to the clutch housing. Now I can remove the ignition module from the engine. Now remove the wire from the ignition coil. I'll remove the boot and the terminal. I'll also remove the heat shield sleeve. Now I can begin installing the new ignition module. First, I'll slide the heat shield over the ignition wire. Then I'll reinstall the terminal. The terminal has a sharp spike on the end. I'll align the spike with the ignition wire and then use a pair of pliers to drive the spike into the insulation. Then I'll reinstall the boot. It can be helpful to spray a little bit of silicone spray, or WD-40, into the boot. I'll pour out the excess, and now I can slide the boot over the terminal and onto the wire. And now reinstall the wire. Now I can reinstall the ignition coil. I'll need to set the proper gap between the coil and the flywheel. To do that, I'll use an ignition coil gapping tool. This is just simply a piece of plastic that's 14/1000ths of an inch thick. If you don't have a gapping tool, a thick business card should work as well. I'll place the gapping tool over the magnets on the flywheel, and then I'll place the ignition coil over that. I'll begin to install the screws, but I won't tighten them. Now I'll press the ignition coil firmly against the flywheel and tighten up the screws. With the ignition coil installed at the proper gap, I can remove the gapping tool. Now reconnect the trimmer attachment to the engine. I'll reconnect the fuel tank. Now reconnect the ignition wires. And secure them out of the way. Now reinstall the carburetor. I'll insert the screws through the carburetor and reinstall the gasket. And now I can secure the carburetor to the engine. Now reinstall the air filter and the air filter cover. And I'll finish by reinstalling the engine cover. And that's how you can replace the ignition coil in your small engine. Be sure to check back often for new videos and expert advice. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up
And leave a comment.